Books are the quietest and most constant of friends. They are the most accessible and the wisest of counselors and the most patient of teachers. Wise words from a great personality, William Elliot. Very warm good morning. It's my utmost privilege to extend my warm welcome to all of you on behalf of the Library Club of Rajagiri College of Management and Applied Science, Kakinad. As we all know, today we are here together to celebrate the star of today's book talk, the most delightful and memorable book, Around India in 80 Trains by Monisha Rajesh, which triumphantly demonstrates there's life yet in both the trip and the telling. It is exciting to have you all on board to enjoy this book review led by Dr. Rani PL, Associate Professor and HOD, Sri Satya Sai Institute of Higher Learning. Without further ado, let me take this opportunity to invite the dignitaries. On behalf of Library Club, firstly, I would like to recognize our Director, Reverend Father Dr. Mattu Vattatikara, CMI, in his absence. Next, I would like to recognize our beloved Principal, Father Ajish Pudisheri, CMI, in his absence. Now, I would like to recognize our Chief Guest of the day, Dr. Rani PL, who is an Associate Professor and HOD of Sri Satya Institute of Higher Learning. Teachers affect eternity. No one can tell where the influence stops. I would like to recognize all our beloved teachers and all our dear participants to this webinar. Before advancing to this program, let's grace this occasion with a word of prayer. I invite Shruti of second year Moral to Finance and Taxation for the prayer.
നന്മയാകുന്ന കാന്തി കാണുവാൻ കണ്ണിനാകേണമേ നല്ല വാക്കിൻ്റെ ശീലു ചൊല്ലുവാൻ നാവിനാകേണമേ സ്നേഹമാക്കുന്ന ഗീതമോ എൻ്റെ കാതിനിണയാകണേ സത്യമെന്നുള്ള ശീലമോടിനും ശാന്തി അറിയണമേ
Thank you, Shruti. I now invite Pavitra Ajish of second year Moral to Finance and Taxation for the welcome address.
A very good morning to one and all present here. Respected Director, Reverend Father Dr. Matthew Vattatikara, CMI, Principal Father Ajish Pudisheri, CMI, we welcome you in your absence, dear fathers. And Chief Guest, Dr. Rani PL, Library Club in charge, Ms. Sai Parvati IR, Faculty Coordinators, Ms. Merlina Antony and Ms. Elsa Jacob, respected teachers and my dear friends, I welcome you all. Today, we have gathered here for a book review session by an expert in the field, Dr. Rani PL, who is an Associate Professor and HOD of Languages and Literature and currently the IQAC Coordinator of Sri Satya Sai Institute of Higher Learning, deemed to be University Anantapur. An academician with 3 decades of teaching experience in higher education sector, she takes engaging language and literature classes for the undergraduates, postgraduates, and research scholars. Post-colonial literature, media linguistics, academic writing are some areas of her interest. An impactful English teacher, she is an avid teacher, an inspiring orator, and an engaging writer. A natural logophile, she is also a Scrabble enthusiast. Most welcome, ma'am.
Thank you, Pavitra, for your nice words of welcome. It's now time for us to enjoy the ride through the best way of seeing the world. Prepare for a very fine ride. For this, with utmost privilege, I invite Dr. Rani PL, who is an associate professor and head of the Department of Languages and Literature. Currently, she is the IQAC coordinator of Sri Sathya Sai Institute of Higher Learning, a deemed to be university, Andhra. She has been an amazing pioneer in the teaching experience for 3 decades in higher education sector, and she takes engaging language and literature classes for the undergraduates, postgraduates, and research scholars. Post-colonial literature, media linguistics, academic writing are some areas of her interest. She is an impactful English teacher, an avid reader, an inspiring orator, and an engaging writer. She is also a natural logophile and a Scrabble enthusiast. With great honor and pleasure, I now invite Dr. Rani PL to enlighten the gathering with a review on Around India in 80 Trains by Monisha. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, all of you. Could you confirm if my audio and video are clear enough? Yes?
Yes, ma'am.
And is my screen visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. So, good morning and hearty welcome to this session. Greetings from the Sri Sathya Sai Institute of Higher Learning to the Rajagiri College of Management and Applied Sciences. This is the coming together of 2 institutions, and that I think is significant because knowledge and resource sharing is what our society needs today. And in higher educational sector, this will also lead to building capacity and improving the knowledge capital of the nation at large. So I'm very grateful to the Rajagiri College of Management and Applied Sciences, in particular the Reverend Fathers of the Management, the Library Club and its coordinators, including Ms. Sai Parvati, all of who have made this event possible today. More than a lecture by X or Y, for me, it is the coming together of 2 institutions of repute to participate in knowledge sharing. We live in a society that believes in a skill-driven model rather than a knowledge-driven model. Gone are the days when people read much and did little. Today, we do much and read little. But for an appropriate balance in a society, especially a literate society, it's very important that we keep the balance between knowledge and skill. One is not compromised on account of another. So it is in the context of becoming a knowledge-driven society that I think this event, this whole discussion on reading is relevant and important for us. Let me look at what the great English poet some of the students of literature, if there are any, will remember these lines. Where is the wisdom we have lost in knowledge? Where is the knowledge we have lost in information? We have information on our fingertips today. If you have a smartphone, all information is just there in our hands. But that is mere information. Where is the knowledge that we have lost in all this information? And where is the wisdom that we have lost in all this knowledge? These two lines, I believe, firmly establishes the need to pursue knowledge rather than seek information alone. Francis Bacon, an English essayist, has said it very rightly when he says, reading maketh a full man, conference a ready man, and writing an exact man. What did he mean when he said, reading maketh a full man? Full is someone who's complete. Complete because there are ideas and ideologies and beliefs and attitudes that are brimming in his head because he's read widely. A widely read person always stands out in a conversation. I'm sure you've noticed that. And I'm particularly addressing this to the youth, to the students who are listening to this session today, because I'm sure you all aim to have great communication skills. You aim to be able to contribute to a conversation productively and positively. And for all of that, it's very important to be well-read, if not well-read, to at least have the habit of reading. In fact, some studies say, even if you read for 20 minutes a day, that is sufficient mental fitness. It is like your physical exercise. We say at least 20 minutes of physical exercise. This is like 20 minutes of mental exercise if you focus on reading. While the other two lines of Bacon are not exactly related to what we're talking, let me explain to you just in case. Conference is the ability to converse, to confer, makes a ready man. The more experience we have, the more we talk to people, the more ready we are for any kind of conversation. And when we write, we have to be more precise, more concise, and more exact than when we converse. So the ability to converse well or to write well, both of it actually comes from our ability to read. So I hope, especially as students of a university, all of you are encouraged and engaged in some productive reading, at least for 20 minutes a day. Bacon also tells us how we should read or approach different kinds of books. Some books are merely to be tasted. You flip through the pages, you get a sense of what is there. You may not really read every page and every line of that book. That depends on the kind of book that's in your hand. For example, I do not know of anybody who reads an entire Encyclopedia Britannica. Thousands and thousands of pages and hundreds of volumes. You go exactly to what you want. You just pick up only that part. Or there are other books that only peripherally interest us. And those books are the ones that we taste. There are some others that we swallow all at once. We pick the book and until we reach the last page of the book, we are unable to keep it down. Irresistible books, they are called. There are a lot of inspiring books that are so irresistible that you swallow, you gobble them up when you get it. I hope as I'm saying these things, you're able to recall in your mind at least one or two examples for each of these books that you have come across. And some books, like your textbooks, are to be chewed and digested. Every single page, you make notes, you highlight, you put bookmarks, you go back to it, you check the meanings of things, you connect it to other citations in the book. Those are the kinds of books that are chewed and digested because you have to understand every bit of what you read in those books. So, when you get a book in your hand, decide whether you want to just taste it, merely taste it, or you want to swallow it, gobble it up entirely, like the books that you read for pleasure, or like the textbooks, chew and digest them. These are very obvious benefits of reading and nothing that I need to actually talk about. Nevertheless, let me bring to light what are some of the major benefits of reading. One of the important things is that it expands or broadens our vocabulary. All of us like to have a good amount of diction to be able to use in our conversations, in our writing. So new words that you come across, or words that are passive in your mind. There are two kinds of vocabulary, the active and the passive. Active is what we use. Passive is what we know but we don't use. Your passive vocabulary comes to active vocabulary with more and more reading. It increases our general knowledge. Let me give you an example. The recent past, I've been reading this book called The Last Queen, because this is a library club and we're talking about books. I'm not going to restrict myself, or I cannot restrict myself to just talking about one book. In the course of my conversation with you, you should be able to get as much information as possible about different kinds of books, because I believe you are all going to be book lovers if you already haven't been from today. So how does it improve our general knowledge? Go to this book called The Last Queen. This is by Chitra Banerjee Divakarni, one of our latest historical fiction. Until I laid my hands on a Kindle copy of it, and I'm mentioning Kindle because we are actually celebrating ebook day, and I'll come to that shortly. So I did not really know the history of Dilip Singh, the last king of Punjab. I did not know how he was taken away to England. I did not know that his mother was actually the daughter of the stable keeper of the king, Ranjit Singh Ji. So your general, and is it important to know these things? Isn't it history and the past? No. A sense of today's India is complete in the youth only when we understand the rich past and the trials and tribulations and triumphs that India as a nation has gone through. So reading improves our general knowledge. This is a very brief example that I gave you. It also gives a better understanding of cultures. In fact, the best way to understand cultures is to travel. And if we cannot travel, the next best thing is to read. And the same author that I'm going to discuss in a while, Manisha Rajesh, she talks about after around India in 80 trains, she does around the world in 80 trains. And she talks about how she's so enamored by the Japanese culture. And she gives one or two short but sweet examples. She says in every ladies' washroom in Japan, at the back of the door, there is a harness that is fixed. Any idea why? So that young mothers who come in with their babies to use the washroom can actually place the baby on the harness.
Ma'am, your mic is muted.
Yeah. Was it like this the whole time?
No, ma'am.
Only now?
Yes, ma'am. Only now.
Yeah, this is good.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. So we're talking about what are the other benefits of reading. Develops empathy. I remember as a little girl when I read the Oliver Twist or David Copperfield, I almost cried, because imagine Oliver Twist saying, "Some more, please." That gruel, that thin gruel or porridge they got. I read very recently, maybe Left to Tell. It is a story of the civil war and the civil war in Rwandan revolution, how millions of people were killed and there is this girl left and she's the only one left in her whole family. Develops empathy. When you look at David Copperfield, what happens when your father is in the debtor's house, in the debtor's prison? What does it do to the psyche of a child? So you develop empathy with people around you because of you learn to align your thoughts with what the characters in your books go through. Reading also improves focus. And let me tell you how. Let's presume you're cooking. You can have the radio or the television on, and that can be going on beside it. But when you're reading, you have to be concentrating only on reading. And that, in a lot of sense, improves focus and attention. In fact, in today's world, the challenge is no more time management. The challenge is attention management. We have 100 things to distract us around us. And I would like each of you, the students who are listening to this, to actually give a test to yourself to see what is your attention span. Can be there was a time, and I must make a self confession here. There was a time that I could read 30 to 40 pages of a book at a stretch without being distracted by anything else. But I realized that in the recent past, what with the WhatsApp and Facebook and Twitter and always working on laptops which are connected to internet, probably after every 2 or 3 pages, I'm going back to do something else. So it'll be a good test for all of us to check. How much is our attention span? Because reading is one sure activity that can improve our focus and our attention span. What about it improving our mental fitness? As I told you, just like exercises and working out is important for the body, it is important for mental alertness, for intellectual agility to keep reading. And the more we read, the more our brains are sharper, more attentive, more concentrated. So we can go on and on and on about the benefits of reading, but that's not only the point that I need to make today. So today we are actually, the Library Club of Rajagiri College has organized this because, I hope you know this, September 18th of every year has been or is being celebrated as a Read an Ebook Day internationally. So the college wanted to have this talk within this week to actually mark the Read an Ebook Day, International Read an Ebook Day, which is specifically designated for September 18th. Now, when did ebooks start? I made a very fantastic discovery when I was reading up to give you this talk. As early as 1930, even when paperback editions of books just arrived in the market, the concept of ebooks had also entered human minds. There was this writer called Bob Brown, and in 1990, he wrote a book called The Readies. And I'll tell you, it's very interesting, which is why I thought I must tell you this. This is what, here's a short excerpt from his book. This is what he says. The written word hasn't kept up with the age. You know, he watched this movie, Talkies. We know that cinema is otherwise called the Talkies, because movie with silent movies was what actually came to the market first. And then movies with sounds came to be popular. So he watched one of the talkies, and then he says, the movies have outmaneuvered it. We have the talkies, but as yet, no readies. He explained why it was necessary to have readies. To continue reading at today's speed, I must have a machine. The world is fast-paced. Everything is speeded up. Why not reading? And that's why he thought in 1930s that we must have a machine that allows us to read. He described his ideal future e-reader as a simple reading machine which I can carry or move around, attached to any old electric light plug, read 100,000 word novels in 10 minutes. And he added, this machine would allow readers to adjust the type size and avoid paper cuts. So 1930s, somebody envisioned the possibility of an ebook when he saw talkies or cinemas which also had adopted sound into it. So if you look at the history of ebook, while this idea was conceived in 1930, it became a reality only in 1971. The first ebook, Michael Hartman, and if you don't know Michael J. Hart, if you don't know Michael J. Hart, you should, because Project Gutenberg is one place I believe all of us go to get our ebooks. Now, Project Gutenberg was started by Michael Hart, and the first ebook he made was the American Declaration of Independence. He converted into an ebook in 1971. So from 30 to 71, for 41 years, this idea had to incubate and become a reality until Hart did what he did. The first ebook day, Read an Ebook Day, that's what it is called, was started in 2004. So we are actually 17 years later that we are slowly getting to hear of it. Probably in our audience, we have a lot of people, including myself, who got to know that there is something called Read an Ebook Day. And it's been happening since 2004. And it was started by Rakuten Overdrive, which is an American ebook. They publish maximum number of ebooks. So they are ebook providers, and they are the ones who started this day called International Ebook Day. Now, what are the advantages? We have a lot of plus and minus in moving from print books to ebooks. What are some of the advantages? One is it cannot be stolen or destroyed. Unlike a physical book that can be torn, that can be stolen from you, an ebook stays. An ebook does not occupy space. You don't need, while I love, and my own childhood is filled with a room that is filled with books. And even today, I'm talking to you from right under my bookshelf. But if you are an ebook reader, then you don't need space to save your books. The number of papers we need, trees that we cut to print books, vis-a-vis the environmental contribution we make by going to ebook, they say is definitely better. Because while ebooks and electronic devices can have their own environmental threats, in one device, you can have thousands of books. So the amount of damage we do is lesser. So we can talk a lot about these, and there are a lot of apps. I'm sure you know Apple in 2007, when Kindle came with the Kindle ebook, that's when the world actually turned in a big way to ebooks. But you had Sony, you had Kobo, you have Apple Books. You have a lot of apps and a lot of free apps. And I want you students to know, you will have a lot of apps in your smartphones, I'm sure. But if you can include in that at least one free ebook app, maybe you will always be carrying a book that you can read when you're waiting for the tram, for the bus, for the train, for the teacher to come to class, and wherever else. Different multiple formats of ebooks that we have. But the world has actually moved from ebooks to audiobooks today, and I'm a big fan of audiobooks because it saves me time. Let's presume I'm driving and taking a weekend drive of 2 hours to reach home from my workplace. For 2 hours, I have the option of listening to an audiobook. So we have moved onward from ebooks to audiobooks. It's a little more challenging because you need to focus a little more when it comes to audiobooks. However, let's come back to now. Having said all of this in general about reading, how we should read, why we should read, and what is this history of ebooks, etc. I will come to what now I was going to. So I planned half my talk on general matters of reading and ebooks, and it's 11:30. I will go to talking about the ebook that I was going to talk to you about. Very recently, when we were doing some syllabus revision for our English courses, that's when I happened to come across this book, Around India in 80 Trains by Monisha Rajesh. Some basic facts about this book. Published in 2012 because it was in 2010 that the author, she's a London-based journalist of Indian origin. She's worked with the Times, with the New York Times, with the Guardian and the Week, etc. She's a travel writer now, primarily. So sometime in 2010, she was in her London office And on her computer, she was reading this article which said that 80 Indian cities have been connected by airlines in India. That article caught her attention, and she actually opened up the map to check the railways, which we know Indian Railways is, I think, the fourth largest in the world, and it is called the Lifeline of India, right? I'm sure many of you know this. So when she looked up, this seed germinated in her the interest and the enthusiasm to actually undertake a journey by train to cover from one end to the other of the Indian railway network. The book, in its different editions, range between 250 to 320 pages, on an average about 275 pages, depending on the size of the book. How is it divided? Into 21 units, if you go to the table of contents, each talking about 2 or 3 of connected trains that she's taken. Is it just a mere travelogue? No. It gives a glimpse of India for you. Now, why did I choose this book? I chose this book because, firstly, I remember as a little girl, I loved traveling by train because I liked the breeze on my face. I liked everything else moving past me when I thought I was stationary, which is the other way around actually. Of course, I liked the cutlets and the vada that they sold in the pantry. And I have also had my misadventures of getting off the train to buy idli vada and missing my train. So there are interesting things that I've also traveled unreserved, and you have to jump into the train and catch a luggage carrier and convert that into a berth. So there are some amazing things that happen in Indian Railways, and everybody is a friend of everybody's when it is the Indian Railways. So this book particularly engaged me when I looked at it because it gives you a very close look at India, its culture across the country, and what the Indian Railways actually does for the nation and for engaging travelers who come seeking to know about India. The dedication particularly interested me, and I was very glad that the introduction that they gave, somebody said, come on board for this journey. In fact, the dedication is also to the little one where Monisha Rajesh, the author, says, for baby Rajesh, who is still on board, not yet come, may all your journeys be filled with adventure, because that's what she describes in this book. By the by, Monisha Rajesh was very recently, I think August, this is September, right? August. She was in the headlines because there was this writer called Kate Clancy. Kate Clancy wrote a memoir, and that book was called Some Kids I Taught. I told you I will keep mentioning names of books. Some Kids I Taught and What They Taught Me. This is a memoir by Kate Clancy. And what happens is, this book, Some Kids I Taught and What They Taught Me, was about children, especially challenged children. And it caught the attention of reviewers for being racist in tone. So there's a lot of uproar and hullabaloo about the racist undertones that they said. In fact, Monisha Rajesh is one of them also, who also reviews this for its racist undertones. To the extent, what I also want to say is, Kate has decided to rewrite the memoir, removing the racist tones. So that's how powerful publishing books and reviewing books are in today's world. You can even make a writer rewrite a book if it has something like this. And the latest that I saw of Monisha is about today's 23rd, 10 days ago, she's tweeted about a book that is coming. It is called Epic Train Journeys. It's a coffee table book where she's going to highlight, with photographs, obviously, because it's a coffee table book, 50 of her best, most memorable train journeys. So these are some basic facts about the book that we're going to talk about. Obviously, in the next 20 minutes, I cannot cover all 275 pages, but I want to give you glances and glimpses of what this book does, or what this book contains. So straight after the session, I would think that you would go searching for this book and start reading this book. Even if you're not a reader by habit, even if you're not somebody who likes to read, I would think that you would like to know more about India, about the interesting facets of its strange journey through reading this book. Before we go into the book, I'm sure the title strikes a chord in your mind because as children, we are likely to have read or heard of this book called Around the World in 80 Days by Jules Verne. This book, this title is actually, and maybe the idea itself, I'm not sure, was inspired by this book. So I need to quickly tell you what is in this book to show you how there are similarities and what ideas from here has gone into the Around India in 80 Trains. So if you get time, and if it has never been prescribed in your extensive reader in your school and in your college, maybe this is a very good time to pick up this book to read. This is about a gentleman called, I think, Fogs. And this is basically a French book, French novel written in 1873. And Phileas Fogg is the character here, main character, who has a French valet, a manservant by name Passepartout. Passepartout, but in French it is Passepartout. So one day, our Fogg gets into a wager, a betting with his friends who say, anybody who goes around the world in 80 days will win a huge sum of money. He takes the bet upon himself because, now this is important, it was exactly around that time that the Suez Canal was opened up. I am sure if from our high school geography and history, we know that the Suez Canal separated Europe and Asia. And when it opened up, that also became the Silk Route through which everybody came to India, the Dutch, the Portuguese, and the British. So it was easy to reach India and reach the end of the globe and go back. So that's why actually Jules Verne writes a story, makes Fogg readily agreeable to take up this journey to travel around the globe. And I want to quickly show you the route that they took because it's interesting. They started from London, and from London they crossed the Suez. They came to India. From Bombay, he went to Calcutta, and in fact, in between, he realized 80 kilometers there was no connection, no railway connection. So he took an elephant ride. And while they were doing the elephant ride, they saw one lady who was going to Sati because her husband had died. And then the Passepartout actually rescues the lady, and that's a very interesting story. So then he goes to Hong Kong with a little stopover at Singapore and Yokohama, and goes around the world to San Francisco, New York, and comes to London. When he reaches, he thinks that it is exactly the 80th day. In fact, he thinks it's the 81st day, and he thinks he's lost the bet because a lot of misadventures delay his journey. But they realize they had traveled eastward, and therefore they have saved a day, and it is actually the 80th day, although according to them it was 81st. So he wins the bet, and it's an interesting story. I hope you go read it. So it is somewhere from this that Monisha Rajesh picked her idea for her book Around India in 80 Trains. And I must also tell you, after writing this book in 2012, she actually undertook a journey around the world in 80 trains. That's the sequel to this, or the next book to this. So that will also be interesting. Now, how is this book important other than about the travel points, which train she took from which place to which place, etc.? Let's look at it from a quote from the book itself. To understand India, of a nation that has got such a varied culture, such diverse culture. It's very important for all of you youngsters, all the young who are listening to me today. It's a plea that we get to know India in its entirety. So if you want to understand India, you must see it, hear it, breathe it, feel it. There is the good, bad, and the ugly, all the three. But only when you experience that, you know where actually you fit in, or where India fits into you. I thought they were very powerful lines when she begins in her preface to the book. I will have to make this short. All the 21 contents that she talks about, I'll talk about 2 or 3 views. The train choices she makes is amazing. So she's looking for a travel buddy, and she finds a friend of a friend who just retired and wants to travel. So they both go to the UK center where they have this information about Indian Railways. They have a list of 30 trains already marked out, and the man there adds a few more, makes it 50 trains for them, and says the remaining 30 can be covered by connecting trains between these major trains. And she undertakes this journey of about 40,000+ kilometers, which is the circumference of the earth. That's another interesting thing. The distance that she travels is equivalent to the circumference of the earth, 40,000 kilometers plus or minus a little. Now, when she chooses the trains, those of you who have traveled by train, there are exotic trains, the Maharaja. There are passenger trains. There are goods trains. There are heritage trains and toy trains. So or there are super fast trains, and now we can have bullet trains. So even amongst trains, you can have a variety of experience. So let me talk to you about 2 or 3 that she points out in her book. The first one that you see here is Deccan Queen. Now that is a train, and why should I talk about it? Because that is a train that was introduced in 1930, and it moves from Mumbai to Pune. Those of you who are from Mumbai, Pune, if you're a Maharashtrian here in this audience, you will easily recognize this train because Pune is called Deccan Ki Rani. So the train was called the Queen of Deccan, or Deccan Queen, and it was India's first super fast train. First electric train, long distance electric train. It was also the first vestibuled train. By vestibules, we know when 2 cars or 2 bogies are connected, you cross from one to the other vestibules. So, if you have toy trains, for example, if you travel from Kalka to Shimla by the toy train, the heritage train, or Nilgiris in Ooty, you cannot move from one bogie to the other. They're not connected. When the train stops, you have to get off and get into the next. But the vestibules helped to connect trains, the different bogies, the different cars. So this was the first train in India that was vestibule. This is also the first train in India to have a women-only car. One bogie, ladies coupe, we say today. So this was the first women-only, and the first train to have a dining car, the pantry that we have today. So it was interesting, and I got to know all of this only because I read the book. So my sense of history about India's railways, what runs where, the lifeline of India, etc., has definitely improved with this reading. And I really, really make a plea to all of you. And it's written in fantastically humorous language, wry, witty style, some places deprecating, but she already says India has the good, bad, and the ugly. She talks about how she loses her luggage. She talks about the mosquitoes. She talks very interestingly about, this is about the passenger trains. We know the commuter trains in Bombay. Those from Mumbai will know. Departing train, and she's a very interesting descriptive style of writing. It's not just a record of I went from here to here on this day and saw this. There is this natural literary flavor in her writing. Departing trains hissed, clanked, and sounded their horns. No more my call to prayer. Halfway up the platform, I spied a bunch of men shoving in the doorway of a passenger train. They squeezed between each other. Isn't that what we do when the trains are overcrowded? Squeezed between each other, elbow, arguing, jostling before they turned and saw me watching. Breaking into sheepish smiles, they waved from the doorway. The train began to sail down the platform and out of the station as I waved back and allowed the crowd to sweep me into its embrace. I also wanted to give you I know all of you are not English literature students, but I wanted you to understand what descriptions like this can actually do when you're reading a book. I allowed the crowd to sweep me into its embrace. The second important and the beautiful thing that I realized, and you will when you read this book, is the Lifeline Express, which is otherwise called the Jeevan Rekha Express. This was a train, and she was traveling to Madhya Pradesh, and then she wanted to see this train and the Lifeline. And what is beautiful, maybe some of you in the audience know this, it was the first train to run a hospital within it. It was launched in 1991. The train has everything, including operation theaters and other facilities. Now, when she went there, she was a witness to how the Indian rural or hill dwellers did not have adequate medical facilities. And the moving train, which went to those interior railroad stations, allowed some medical facility for these people. Now, this led me, actually, this is not in the book, but it led me to find out how and when did this start, Lifeline Express. Now, this is how we extend or expand our knowledge. So this is run by the Indian Railways, along with Impact India Foundation, IIF. And the lady behind this is the lady that you see on the screen. She's Zelma Lazarus. So what happens is in the 1990s, a team of doctors were visiting, foreign doctors. They wanted to visit the Himalayas, and she lent them a mini bus with some medical facilities, which could be useful for the hill dwellers. So one night, when she also traveled with these doctors to the Himalayas, and one night when they were sitting, one of the the remote tiny place there, one man came carrying a dead body of his son on his shoulders to these doctors. Then the doctors realized this boy was not dead, but his appendix had burst. So they did a 1-day-long surgery on him in that minibus and saved his life. Zelma Lazarus was a witness to this, and she started thinking, what if we do something? The next day, she was in New Delhi. So this is where the books can be inspiring. It can be inspiring for you to do service that is required for the society. So a lot of ideas come to us when we read books of different kinds. This happens to be a book on travel, but it gives me a sense of history. It is about how Zelma Lazarus contributed in such a big way. So next day, Mrs. Lazarus was in Delhi. She was wanting and waiting to meet the then Railway Minister, George Fernandez, and nobody would let her in because she didn't have an appointment to meet the minister. She finally made her way in, and when she revealed her idea of converting a couple of train carriages, bogies, into a hospital, the minister was impressed and sanctioned 4 bogies and an engine, which is what she converted into what we call today as the Lifeline Express, the world's first moving hospital. I do not know how many of us were aware that India had the credit of having world's first 3 coaches donated by Indian Railways and funding by the India Impact Foundation. I think it's headquartered in Bangalore, if I remember right, or Mumbai. And it is this now, which is called the Jeevan Rekha Express. And this idea of 1991 came a long way when we had the COVID pandemic and we were short of beds. Some bogies were converted into hospital beds. So reading this book gave me a sense of perspective about there are so many firsts to our credit. India, which is considered still a developing nation, none of the developed nations considered the idea of a train having a mobile hospital. So this book is fantastic also to inspire you. These are the days of startups, days of entrepreneurship. These are some ideas that you will pick up from the books. I'm showing you how there is literature, how there is entrepreneurship, how there is history, everything put together in this book. The third instance from the book that I want to quote. The longest train route is run by what is called the Himsagar Express. It still runs, I think, from Kanyakumari to Jammu Tawi, all the way. And you see this green line, that is where. So that is the longest route. until we have what is called the Vivek Express, which comes later. Dibrugarh from Kanyakumari all the way to Dibrugarh became slightly longer distance than the Himsagar. Now, this is something interesting, and I was thinking, what if I went one day to Kanyakumari, boarded this train, and sat in it and went all the way across the heart of India? See, it's really cutting through the heart of India, and reached Jammu Tawi. How would that journey be? I started imagining, along with Monisha Rajesh and her description. I started wondering how would it be. Maybe that's one thing that went into my bucket list because I read this. And then if I took the Vivek Express, I would cover an entirely different coastline of India, right up to the northeast. She also has very humorous and funny experiences. Now, she's half Indian in the sense she's born to Indian parents. They tried to live in India after some years in England, but they couldn't, so they went back. But here is this interesting thing, one description that I want to share with you. So she settles down in a particular train, and it was night. Someone in the compartment was snoring, and the snoring was over the noise of the fan. We all know how loud and noisy the fans in our railway compartments are. And if somebody was snoring louder, how annoying it must have been for somebody who's English bred. Now the cotton wool made sense. So she had noticed that all the other passengers, a lot of passengers, co-passengers, had cotton wool stuck in their ears, and she didn't understand why until she heard the snore. And then after 3 sleepless hours, I climbed down to check whether the culprit was not choking on his tongue because of the loud snores. I wish I were dead, because without sleep, she was exhausted. Tiptoeing in my socks, I stood by his berth, stared at him through the darkness, wondering how much, and this is interesting, okay? This is where I say it's very humorously described, how a minuscule man can produce a noise of volcanic proportions. Tiny man, but the sound is like volcanic proportions. A Korean girl in the berth across from him sat up, and her hair spiked like a porcupine, began rocking back and forth as a baby in the middle berth began to whimper. So on one side, you're getting the snores. On another side, there is a baby that is whimpering. And this is typically an Indian railway compartment. The compartment was starting to resemble an asylum. Okay, and then you can go on. Another thing that she talks about is, in England, when people travel by tubes, because they're underground trains, they're called tubes, nobody looks at anybody. Everybody is dug deep into their newspapers, or probably now smartphones. No conversation. There's such a reserved lot that no conversation happens between people, co-passengers. In contrast, we know what happens. If you spend 2 hours in the train, you actually know the family history of the person sitting opposite you. And this is one of the typical experiences that she has. So there is this gentleman sitting opposite to her, and he begins a conversation saying, "This is my father and this is my wife's father. Where is mummy, daddy?" Because she's a young girl traveling. So he wants to know how are you traveling? But in today's world, you would say, "I'm an adult and I don't need anybody to accompany me." But look at this. "My parents, oh, they are in England," she says. "Father allowing you being here alone?" I nodded. And he looked appalled. All the way from England, she's been allowed to come alone by her mummy, daddy? "Why are you going to Mangalore?" It was a train that was taking her to Mangalore. "You're having brothers, sisters there?" So, the typical Indian English, you want to converse with her in English because she looks like an English lady, although she's Indian. No family. You're catching a train from Mangalore to Madgaon tomorrow afternoon. "Oh, you're visiting with friends?" No friends either. You're just traveling through to catch the next train. So it was only a connecting train. And then you know what he does? "Tomorrow, you come with me in Mangala Devi temple. Very beautiful, very special place. I'll take you." So somebody whom she's just met for the next 5 minutes, last 5 minutes, has already given her found out where she's from, how her parents allowed her to travel by herself, why she's going to Madgaon, and then he's also invited her to go with him to the temple in Madgaon. So this is a kind of friendliness and geniality. Whether you consider it intrusive or genial is very much up to us. But this is the actual picture of Indian life that she captures in this book. These are, yeah, where she makes notes. This is around the world in 80 trains, the picture from there, and she's making her notes. And this is, she says, I don't like to disturb myself by clicking pictures, picture, picture, picture. I want to be in the moment, and I want to watch the blue sky, and I want to watch the lake, and I want to watch the mountains. But she takes those short notes of important details, and end of the day, she makes long notes and puts the pictures together, which is how she makes the book. So next time you're going on a short family trip, maybe you should attempt this, and you will find this, I'm sure, an important exercise. So around India in 80 days, this book, is it a travelogue? Very much. About somebody who traveled for 4 months in India, catching 80 different trains. Is it a memoir? Yes. She recalls from her mind everything that happened to her during the trip. In fact, it started as a pure memoir and turned out to be travelogue. Is it adventure? Yes, a lot of adventures and misadventures that happened to her. You must read for yourself. I shouldn't spill the beans. Is it history? Entirely. It can be actually read as the history of Indian railways, and maybe partially the history of modern India, because a lot of things there add to our understanding of India and its history. Is it drama? Oh, plenty. The way she describes the commuter passenger trains, the way she describes her travel buddy and their relation with each other, all of this contributes to the drama in this book. What have people said about this book? I know 2.5 minutes. William Dalrymple, and I'm showing this because he's a fantastic writer of Indian history. And a lot of books, if you Google him, you will find the most, and he talks about the Kohinoor and how it was stolen, all of this in very interesting detail. And he has given his review of this book. He says it's a wonderfully wry and witty debut, because the first book crackles and sparks with life like an exploding box of Diwali firecracks. That is it's full of you can laugh, you can guffaw and laugh when you read some of the experiences that she describes. That's why he says it's like an exploding box of Diwali fireworks. And Giles Coren says it's a great, big, lovely, shambling train ride of a book, offering wonderful views, hilarious interludes, all sorts of dodgy, maybe shady, I should say, characters, and some peculiar smells, all for the one ticket. And I tell you, there was something called Indrail. Indrail was a ticket that foreign countries gave to any foreigner who wanted to travel India. Between this time to this time, if you bought an Indrail, you can get to any train using that ticket and travel the whole place. So she, in fact, Monisha Rajesh also came with an Indrail ticket here. Are there more books of this kind? Yes. This is just a sample, but this is very interestingly written. I have happened to read Chai Chai. That's about all the junctions, huge railway junctions of India. This one, Paul Thoreau's The Great Railway Bazaar. These are some other books which also, Ruskin Bond has also written a book. It is called Indian Railway Stories. So all of these books are interesting reads in similar area. I wanted to let you have a list of it. Should you read? Each of you should read any one book of your choice. Give yourself a schedule. Spend 20 minutes for mental fitness as much as you go to the gym, because you all are future leaders of the country. The intellectual capital of the nation is very important. With reading comes intellectual embellishment, intellectual abilities, and critical thinking powers. As academicians, as teachers in higher educational sector, I want to include all the academicians and senior professors in this gathering to talk to our youngsters who are future leaders. If you are a reader today, tomorrow you will be a good leader. Please read. Read useful books, read productive books, fill yourself with noble thoughts and ideas that will spur more noble thoughts and ideas in your conduct and in your life. So, wish you all happy reading. Thank you for this opportunity, Rajagiri College, Reverend Fathers, academicians, senior professors, everybody involved in this. My grateful thanks for allowing me to dwell on an interesting book that I read in the recent past. I hope all of you will actually run straight to the library to find the book, or actually haggle with your librarian to purchase the book immediately. I'm 1 minute, 5 seconds beyond time. With this, I will close my talk. Thank you so very much, Rajagiri.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for the interesting talk. I'm really sure that the review has helped gain insights for each one of us. And thank you for enlightening us with various necessities of reading and for the brief talk on ebook. And I'm sure many among us will start the reading exercise from tomorrow. Thank you, ma'am. Now we have come to the end of this program. I invite Philip Joseph of second year Moral to Finance and Taxation to propose the word of thanks.
On behalf of the entire fraternity of the Institute, I would extend my sincere thanks to Almighty God for making today's event a grand success. I'm truly honored to express my gratitude to our chief guest, Dr. Rani P.L., who spent her busiest time praising the occasion as well as sharing her views. Today, we have the opportunity to bear your thoughts, and this is definitely encouraging us in future events. Next, I would like to thank our director, Reverend Father Dr. Matthew Vatatara CMI, Principal, Father Ajesh Puducherry CMI, Library Club in charge, Ms. Sai Parvati IR, faculty coordinators, Ms. Marlena Anthony and Ms. Elsa Jacob for their guidance and support. Our sincere thanks to Assistant Professor Mr. Sijo Jacob and the Department of Computer Science for rendering the technical support in all the ways. I also thank the teaching fraternity, non-teaching staff for all the cooperation and support extended to make this possible. I might be failing in my duty if I am not mentioning the student fraternity. Thank you all. Hope this session is a true ignition for all the bibliophiles. Thank you all.
Around the World in 80 Trains by Monisha Rajesh, captured with wit and warmth, energy and zest. One woman's attempt to circumnavigate the globe in 80 trains. I hope everyone enjoyed the book review, and may I thank each one of you for your sincere participation once again, and especially thanking the teachers and students who have put in their efforts in making this webinar a great success. Thanks a ton, Dr. Rani PL, for your valuable time. With this, we have come to an end of the session. Students are requested to join their respected classes for the 5th hour. Thank you for joining us. Have a great day. Thank you.